Today, from fighting literal fires to putting out political ones, we'll talk to the head of Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department about the job of running the city's emergency services. Later in the program, a millionaire's bachelor pad is the launching pad for a story about architecture and murder. But first, from reviving pensions to securing firefighter pay raises, Jacksonville's Fire Rescue Chief has had a banner year, and I've been lucky enough to cover a lot of that as a reporter here at WJCT. But his 2 decades with the agency have not been completely stress-free. To discuss that, we're joined now by JFRD Chief Keith Powers. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm wonderful for a Monday. Now, I've known you probably for a good 10 years as a reporter, as you've risen up in the front ranks. We've certainly covered some storms together. You weren't in the front during some of the wildfires of the 80s and 90s, but I know you were out there. So let's just talk about you, first of all, and the guy that you were when you had hair, maybe. You began fire service with Nassau County Fire Rescue in the 1990s, and just take it from there. I mean, here you are working in Yulee, battling, pine fires or whatever.
Yeah, I was not going to be a fireman. My wife's dad was a firefighter for Jacksonville for 32 years, and she was not going to be married to a fireman. And it just so happened a friend of mine in Briceville that is a contractor out there, but he was a volunteer firefighter, and he asked me to go to a volunteer firefighter meeting in Briceville with him, and that's how it all started. And I just fell in love with it and come home one day and told Robin, I think I'm fixing to go to fire school. And that didn't go over well to start with, but I went to fire school and got hired in Nassau County and served a couple years up there. And then in 1996, got my dream job to come to work for JFRD.
Now, I made the comment about when you had hair. I've been meaning to ask this officially for years. I know the reason. Lots of folks know it. But why do so many firefighters who I know, including someone in my neighborhood, have adopted the hairless attitude? It can't be stress.
Yeah. So what really happens is our masks that we wear in fires, they're made of rubber. And where it goes over the head, they used to, when you pulled them tight, it would wind your hair up in there in the rubber, and then you couldn't get it out. So when you went to take the mask off, you just kind of had to pull it off, and hair came out with it. So that's why I cut mine. Plus the fact that I'm follically challenged in certain spots on my head, so it just kind of became easier and easier for it to get shaved closer and closer. And
well, remember that, folks out there, you heard it here first on First Coast Connect as to why some, not all firefighters, have gone follically challenged with the assistance of a razor blade. Now, you come into Jacksonville between 1999 and 2006. You rise through the ranks from engineer all the way up to captain in charge of fire stations on the west side. So when did the thought, maybe I can take this one to the top, maybe I can work hard and I can learn stuff and be a leader of all versus some?
Never.
It
never did. Never had a desire. In fact, when I came on at Fire Station 17, which is over in Woodstock Park, the engineer that was over there at the time, we used to talk about it, and all I wanted to do was be able to promote to the rank of engineer so I could retire with some dignity. I didn't have to come in at the lowest rank and never make any rank at all. And I made engineer in 99, and 2003 made lieutenant, and 2006 made captain. And that was kind of where I wanted to get, was to captain, because that's where, you're still in the fire station, you're still out there on the streets, but you're at the top of that level. And just so happened that Chief Kurt Wilson, who used to be the fire chief, was the chief of operations at the time, and he approached me about going to run our tactical support division, which is what maintains all of our apparatus. I had a background in that before I got on the fire department with WWK, and after some back and two, I ended up over there, and things just started happening that I did not plan or desire. It just happened. And when he became the fire chief, he asked me to come be his chief of operations. And after he retired from becoming the fire chief, Mayor Lenny Curry asked me to come be the chief of the department, but it was never anything planned.
And that's 2019. And now here you have the honor of being a fire chief with 2 administrations. You say that's a first?
So Captain Nick Tyson is one of our department historians. He informed me the other day, I wasn't aware of it, that I'm the first fire chief since consolidation that's ever made the transition between administrations.
Now, I have been here for 40 years covering things. Chances are we've been in the same vicinity a lot of times. I've watched the fire chiefs. I've watched the top chiefs, the captains, everyone doing a fire, just like on TV. There they are with the radio. There's the fire. And just watch your step, all the hoses. What are some of the memorable fires or incidents that you have handled yourself in any capacity?
Probably the most memorable one I have is a fire on Beaver Street between Edgewood and Ellis Road. And it was called the Tire Man, and it was a building that was almost a city block long. And I was the rank of firefighter working for a captain named Lloyd Ray, who was my first officer. And he believed in playing musical chairs. He didn't believe that you sat in the same seat every day. And so one day he would drive and I would ride in charge and the engineer would ride in the back, and we just moved around. He wanted everybody to know everybody's job. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a November night, cold, rainy, cold front coming in. And I would happen to be riding in the in-charge seat. And we went to this fire that ended up, today would be a fifth alarm. At that time, it was a second alarm. But I did such a great job, I burned a whole city block down. But seriously, it had used tires in it. There wasn't a lot we could do.
Well, people have to realize that a tire fire can molder forever because that's the material that it is.
Yeah, but the heat is so intense. The BTUs that are put off by those tires are so intense that there's nothing you can do about it. But that was my first big fire riding in charge, and I'll never forget that. I learned a lot at that fire. I remember I tried to give the radio back to Captain Ray and let me catch the hydrant because we laid out going in, and he was like, "I'm not here. You're in charge." And that's how he taught us how to be and how to do. And I learned a lot of lessons from him.
What about things that you yourself have had hands-on with? I have, over my 40 years, been to some scenes, and as a TV cameraman once, my light was necessary some nights for some incidents. They'd say, "We need your light, just don't shoot it." Okay, fine, no problem. And your heart breaks. Did you have any of those? Because I certainly have memories of a lot of heartbreaking episodes. As a reporter, I can't react to them, but I still think about them.
Yeah, probably losing firefighters is probably the toughest thing scenes I've been to. When we lost the two firefighters at sea, and had right after I became fire chief, and we had a week-long search for those. That was pretty tough. Dealing with Stephanie McClooney and her family. With that loss. One of the things that I remember greatly about that was how the community rallied around the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department to try to help us in that time, not only helping us look offshore, but bringing food and water to the scene where we were running our command post. That meant a lot inside, but it was very difficult dealing with, understanding the loss that was coming for Stephanie and her family and the family out of Virginia.
I remember that very well. I remember the toughest for me was a child in a car crash, a child in a fire where a grandmother couldn't get out, 2 years ago because she had bars on her window, and the neighbor let us look into that room, and there's a child's book sitting on the windowsill, and there were children inside. And then that became a launching point for another free fire alarm program and more.
Yeah, when I was at 17 in Woodstock, I went to a fire one time where a grandmother with 3 children actually found her at the front door burglar bars, and she had the 3 kids in her arms and the key in her hand trying to get out of the burglar bars. Those are tough scenes. You don't forget them. Just to see that tragic loss of life is absolutely heartbreaking.
And at least, as I've known with you and Captain Proswimmer, who's your PIO, those are launching points for education for the public. You go out, we don't realize that there is a fire alarm program. The folks at Firehouse Subs also have done that with the money they raise. You use that to tell people in the cold weather, don't sleep near a kerosene heater, electric heater. In the hot weather, watch your wiring. And yet we still have fires caused accidentally by cooking and things like that. So it doesn't matter what season. That's at least you guys are using it, I've noticed, as a launching point for education.
Yeah, we have a fire safety community advocate that goes out anytime we have a fire that somebody's critically injured in or that's killed in. We go into that neighborhood and intensely saturate that neighborhood passing out smoke detectors, passing out fire safety information to try to just get the information out, and hopefully that will prevent somebody else from, a loss of life in the future.
Now, in case you're just joining us, we are talking about Jacksonville's Fire and Rescue Department with Chief Keith Powers, and we want you to join the conversation live on air by calling us at 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. Now, the one thing that I've noticed in my past few years is the amount of ribbon cuttings and golden shovels that I've been to. Apparently, during Mayor Curry's administration, there was a major push, which is still going on today. In fact, one right outside our door here, to get more fire stations. So you've been around. What's the genesis? I mean, it seems to me we have fire stations everywhere we need them. Duh, maybe not. You tell me.
So we have a lot of fire stations in the city, but because of the ISO rating that we currently enjoy as an ISO Class 1, that requires us to continually grow as a department. But in addition, if you don't live within 5 road miles of a fire station, then you don't enjoy those ISO Class 1 insurance savings. And so we're trying to put fire stations in areas that are not within 5 road miles. And then some areas, our Hogan Road Station, for example, that area, 51, which is off Old St. Augustine Road, and the whole northwest quadrant is just so busy right now that we need to put in what we call pocket stations, and that's just to relieve the amount of runs that are happening in that area to ensure that we can respond in the appropriate amount of time to save your life should something happen. So because the city's growing so much, fire rescue has to grow with that.
I mean, I can think of a number of occasions. For example, E-Town obviously used to be just sand dunes and pine forests. You've got a fire station there now along that 9B extension where there's tons of traffic. You have a fire station near the IKEA there on Gate Parkway, and you had a 3-alarm apartment fire when the complex was being built. And if that doesn't put a punctuation mark on, hey, we need a station here, then just drive that area or go to the burger place nearby on a Friday night and watch the amount of traffic there to realize that station is needed. And you do something which I didn't realize. You put a double wide in and a shed and then start building next door so that the station gets there earlier than the capital construction time period.
Yeah, and we're doing that currently right now with Fire Station 76 out on the north side off New Berlin Road. We put the double wide trailer and a shed there to put the apparatus in, and we're fixing to start building the real hard facility, but that takes time. And if we wait on that to happen, it could be years down the road before we actually get fire and rescue services in that area. So we go ahead and put a temporary station in place and then start working on the capital station itself.
Would you say this is a record-breaking period of establishing or building fire protection in the city? Maybe not since the 40s or 50s. Has something like this occurred?
I think it is the record. I tell people we are living in the golden age of fire and rescue right now, not only with the growth of fire stations, but the growth of personnel within the department and apparatus. This is the golden age of the fire rescue industry in Jacksonville.
And it's not just men and women riding fire engines, cross-trained to be paramedics. You have instituted some much more trauma medicine oriented. What's the name of the new units that actually are carrying some serious drugs and plasma and blood products?
So every unit, every fire engine, ladder, marine boat, rescue unit in the city is advanced life support. We're the largest advanced life support department in the country. But we just recently started a program called Critical Care Paramedic Rescue Units, which even up that level of care even higher, talking about the blood products and stuff that you just mentioned, to help ensure that when we show up, we basically have a rolling emergency room showing up at your house to help you if you're having a medical emergency.
And that, I mean, what's the difference between that and the rescue unit that rolls up with the fire engine?
Just the level of care is higher. JFRD has been at the forefront of leading at a lot of things in the fire and rescue industry. We started rescue right here in Jacksonville in 1967. Now every fire station you go to in the country's got a rescue unit or an ambulance sitting in there, but that started right here. In 1977, hazmat in the fire service started here. It was nowhere else in the world. It started here. We had people flying in from all over the world to see how Jacksonville was doing that. Now every fire and rescue department in the country has a hazmat team. just our emergency preparedness division that falls under fire rescue. It's the first accredited EOC in the country, and I could go on and on with these first. And again, this critical care paramedic rescue unit concept was just another one of those things we wanted to be the first at and start setting the standard or the bar higher. The intent, I won't see it in my career, but the intent is to have every rescue unit in this city be critical care paramedic rescue unit certified. But the problem is that it takes time. Is you have to be, we require that you be nationally certified to be on those units. And that takes a lot more training and a lot more time getting prepared for those tests. So we're gradually working through that process, but hopefully in 4 or 5 years down the road, that's where we'll be.
Now, what about what's coming? I mean, obviously, we are sitting at WJCC Studios, and you are building, as we speak, a brand new Marine fire station right outside. They're putting the pilings in, and that's going to move the old Marine unit from what used to be at Metro Park and the kids campus. Now it's somewhere else, moves it here, and it's right next to a bridge that has issues. So when are we seeing that? And you did mention you're running into something right now and trying to get it built.
Yeah, so we're working on the dock portion of it right now. That's phase one, and they're obviously are running in as they drive those piles. They're running into some debris as they're driving those piles, and they're having to try to figure out some solutions to that right now. That's why we don't hear them out there pile driving today. But very shortly, phase one of that dock will be finished, and we'll start the construction of the actual physical fire station right behind that. But we have fire stations under construction throughout the city right now. New Fire Station 22 is going to open up on July 29th. Over off of Lane Avenue.
Oh, I know he'll send a news release.
And Lennox Avenue. Yeah, we'll be sending that very shortly to you. We have Fire Station 76, which I mentioned earlier, has a temporary station now, but that is the hard station is in the design phase right now. We'll probably be starting construction in the next 6 or 8 months on that station. We've asked for Fire Station 66 in the upcoming budget, CIP. The mayor will be presenting that on the 15th of this month. We'll see if we're getting that, but that's Maryland 295. These are all in the CIP 5-year plan. Fire Station 67 is currently in that plan as well for Sherwood Forest. That area has a lot of runs, and we need to get some help in there for them to reduce response times. And Fire Station 77 is in the CIP as well, and that's planned, and that's out way out on the west side, west of 301. Between the Trail Ridge landfill and I-10 and all the way to the Baker County line.
That's literally past Maxville. That's as far as you can go.
Yeah, there's a development coming out there that is going to be as big or bigger than Nocatee. And so we've already got land designated out there inside of this area, this new area that's going to be constructed out there, and got the fire station plan. The plan for that fire station is to have an engine, a ladder, a rescue, a chief, a tanker. It's going to be a big fire station, but because it's so far out and isolated like that, it needs all of that equipment to be able to respond to that area with the growth that's coming.
Guys, we would love to hear you some calls here. Give us a yell at 904-549-2937. And we've got Kevin from Jacksonville has a comment. So let's go to Kevin. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. I live in the Nocatee. I live in Nocatee in the Duval section of Nocatee. We're served by, I believe it's Station 62 across from the Avenue Mall. And I'd like you to comment a little bit on mutual aid compact because that station's about 15 minutes from me. And St. John's responds on many occasions when there's emergencies. I'll hang up and listen to your response.
Thank you. That's right. I was just about to ask the question. If you live on one of the county lines, you have mutual aid with other departments in other counties. And many's the time I've gone to fires, and there's 2, even 3 different counties. So where did that develop? Is it because we've started growing so much in the borders, you can't tell where one county line stops and another begins?
That's really what's happened in Nocatee. Part of Nocatee is in Duval County, part of it's in St. Johns County. But there's 2 things that we have. We have mutual aid agreements with all the surrounding counties, but we also have auto aid agreements with some of the surrounding counties as well. And Nocatee is a prime example of that, where the fire station that's in Nocatee that belongs to St. Johns County, we have our dispatch stuff in their fire station. So when our closest units gets dispatched to a run inside of Nocatee, so does the St. Johns County Fire Station, and they respond because they can get there quicker than we can. And that ensures that the citizens that are living within Duval County get great fire protection as well and great EMS service. Those auto aid agreements are also critical in ensuring that our ISO rating for those folks stays low as well. So your insurance rates are not as high as they would be if we didn't have them.
And that's the reason for the pocket stations. You use that phrase, but let me explain better. A pocket station is to put a smaller station in between two existing stations because the growth and the number of runs are getting so bad for the existing ones that they need some help in between, right?
Yeah, the run numbers are just so high that we have to get them in there. We have some stations that are running in excess of, 700, 800, 900 runs a month, just one station. Station 1 downtown is a prime example of that. They're running 700, 800, 900 runs a month, and it just becomes to the point that now they're so busy that the companies that are around them have to come in, and then the companies that are around those have to come in and backfill for those because the run numbers are so high. So we have to put pocket stations in place. In fact, one of the things that we're looking at in future planning is where are we going to put another downtown fire station? Because with the growth coming downtown, we've got, and the run numbers at the level they are, we're going to have to put some pocket stations in the downtown area.
And, a year ago, that would have been a nice academic question. And then the Rise Doro, 98% complete wood frame underneath, becomes a multi-alarm blaze that keeps on smoldering. Your thoughts about that and maybe the tragedy of seeing something so close to helping a renaissance of this neck of the woods become what it is now, concrete core, soon to re-begin?
Yeah, it was tragic and it was almost heartbreaking, because, Mayor Curry, when he was the mayor, he planted some seeds. Mayor Deegan has continued to plant those seeds down. I tell people all the time, downtown in 5 years, because of the work of these two mayors, is not going to look the same. It's not going to, you wouldn't recognize, if you left and came back 5 years later, you're not going to recognize this landscape. And that was, the Doro was one of those. And to see it, when I got that call late that night that it was burning and what was going on with it, it was just, it was heartbreaking because it was so close to completion. But the men and women of JFRD just did an amazing job for almost a week down there under some pretty difficult circumstances.
Yeah, you guys sent us the audio of some of the radio transmissions, and there are multiple times, and that leads to our caller coming up here in a second, multiple transmissions to get your tail out of there because there's fire above you, there's fire below you, and get out and we'll attack this. And as you ultimately did, you put the towers, the ladders in four corners, and I'll never forget watching the water just gushing out of the lower floors as it's still smoldering and then burns up top. So that leads us to the call. Henry from Avondale, he's got a question about firefighter safety, which we've just seen. So good morning, Henry. You are on the air.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. And thank you, Chief, for your service. In all of my interactions with the department, your men and women have been just really first class, and the esprit de corps has been great to see. So thank you all. My question is about the health and welfare of those men and women. So I'm just curious about, I'm sure you've looked at studies about cancer rates or COPD rates of firemen and firewomen and how you take care of your people and for example, the fire suppression clothing they wear, the heavy coats and pants and the chemicals that are in them. I know you're exposed when you're fighting a fire, you're exposed to all kinds of chemicals, but what about the actual equipment they use or the clothing they wear, and how do you monitor the health of your people long term? That's my question and concern.
Thank you, Henry. Well, what about that? Because we have unfortunately seen some firefighter deaths of late that are not on the scene, but are after a call.
So my number one job, the number one thing I do is make sure our men and women go home safe every day. And that's a tough job when you work in the unknown situations that these men and women work on. I say it all the time. We've got the greatest fire and rescue department in the country, and it's because of the men and women we have serving on the street every day that go above and beyond just what the average firefighters do out there. But we also are blessed to have a mayor that that supports public safety. It's one of her top priorities, and she makes sure that we have the top of the line. We call it PPE, personal protective equipment, Our bunker gear, our coats and our pants and our helmets that we wear is top of the line. It's the best in the industry. We have departments from all over the country, big departments all over the country that want the quote Jacksonville spec for our bunker gear, because we have, with Line Apparel, who provides us with our equipment, we have a reputation of having the best in the business. And that's because we have a mayor that cares about firefighter safety and makes sure that our folks can go home. But, the caller's right. Firefighters have a 14% greater chance of having cancer than the average citizen out there. And so one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we're doing everything we can in the equipment we provide them and the training we provide them to make sure that they can go home safe and enjoy their retirement. But it's not just the cancer that our folks are dealing with. It's, they're also dealing with the psychological effects of the scenes that they go to as well. And making sure that we're providing that care for them is one of our top priorities. We have the largest peer support team in the state of Florida. We get called by the International Association of Firefighters and other departments to come in and help their departments because our peer support team is so large. And then on top of that, if it's something that the peer support team can't help that firefighter with, then we have different professional groups that we can refer those firefighters to make sure that they're getting the mental health care that they need.
I still, as a hard news reporter, still have very serious dark thoughts about two scenes I was at where I did find, and in one case by surprise, a victim. Because then this is back in the 80s when reporters with care were allowed a little closer. Now, and I don't want to see this, but I understand that. Now, let's go on to something a little more in the crystal ball. What's your dream project? What would you love to see get done, or projects get done while you're chief, get started while you're chief, or maybe as you plan retirement? What would you like to see get done in the next few years?
Continue to provide the fire rescue services that this community needs. That's the number one thing, that we do as a department, is making sure that we have adequate fire and rescue services. And that requires a lot of planning, and there's a lot of folks involved in that planning, the planning phase of that to help us get to where we want to get. But one of my special projects is the critical care paramedic rescue units. I would love to see in a very short time period, those all become the normal in Jacksonville. And again, we set the standard for the world to look at. That's one of the projects I'm really proud of.
Now, the other thing we were talking about before the show is I've been here for 40 years as a journalist. I don't really remember as much media coverage of the firefighter and police contracts as we've had, whether there was just ability for journalists to come in and watch some of the discussions, get photos, the handshakes, whatever. Characterize this last union contract discussion. Good, bad, tough, easy, or what?
I think they're all tough, because the union's looking for a certain level, and then the city has a responsibility, to keep things physically responsible. And so there's a balance there to make sure that our men and women are taken care of, but also make sure that the tax dollars are spent wisely. One of the things that I do is try to make sure that I treat tax dollars just like I do my own. And anybody that knows me knows I'm extremely tight. I don't spend money. That's just not me. And I try to do the same thing and look after tax dollars the same way. But this negotiation was not a lot different than any of the rest of them, but for some reason it got a lot of fanfare, a lot of attention was put on. One of the reasons was I think it was a priority of Mayor Deegan to get a good, fair contract to the men and women that serve out there every day, and I think she was proud of that when that was finally accomplished.
Question I've been meaning to ask you: when you were reannounced, or as your continuation as fire chief during the news conference at City Hall, I just got the feeling that you weren't going to, per se, last as long as the Deegan's first term administration. What are your plans? Can you tell me what you're going to do? You're going to hang up the badge at some point soon?
I am. I only have 2 years left, and then I have to retire because of the drop plan. And my plan is to buy a farm and start not commercially farming. I don't want to farm for a living. I just want to farm for fun. And so I look every day. We were Captain Prosper and myself were just laughing about it a while ago. I look every night at farms that are for sale in South Georgia and North Florida, trying to find one that I can buy and have that set for retirement.
So you are bucking the trend. Former chief administrators usually find teaching jobs or they go to another department nearby. One of your former JFRD video people is now chief of Clay County, has been for years. Certainly many of JSO's people have gone on to become chiefs or sheriffs. So you don't want to instill your knowledge to others?
I don't. I want to. My dream has been my whole life is to have this farm. I really want to do that. I think that my granddaddy's farm kept me out of a lot of trouble as a young man, young child, and I want to do the same thing for my grandchildren and give them something, somewhere to go, something to do besides roaming the streets. That's kind of my plan, and that's what I plan to stick to.
And you sort of said before, you want to go out as the chief of a top department. Maybe it just wouldn't be as much fun being in a smaller community.
It's nothing. I came from small Nassau County. I came from there, and great department. But I say this all the time. I've been very fortunate to have gotten to play in the major leagues, and that's where I want to retire from.
One last caller for you, Chief. We have Eric from Arlington who's got an interesting question about which we had when the Rise Door went. So, Eric, hey, you're on the air.
Yeah, real quick. I mean this respectfully. How much does it cost to fight a fire, and why is it that we are still fighting fires in the same way that we did 150 years ago? I guess there's just no better way. Would it be helpful if there were cameras in various places so you could look at fires in real time on the way there and decide, how to cost effectively deal with those fires, or are any of these questions relevant? Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Eric. And our question back then was, why are we still doing wood frame for multi-story buildings?
You would have to ask the engineers that. That's above a fire chief's pay grade. But what I will say is, water on fire works. That's just how you put them out, right? You cool down the BTUs, and once you get the BTUs to a certain level, it quits burning. It's the triangle. You cut off one side of that triangle. Whether it's oxygen, heat, or fuel. When you cut one of those out, the fire goes out. And so that's why we fight fire the way we do. But we do not fight fire the same way we did 100 years ago. The technology that we use is so far advanced. To his question about cameras, there are cameras all over. We have a drone team that puts drones up over the top of these fires where we can see them. We have a new tablet command program that allows us to get overhead shots and manage where our firefighters are at, understanding that we need to keep them safe, and knowing it gives the incident commander an opportunity to pull them out of that building when they need to, but it gives him the technology to use to do that. Where they used to keep that on a pad and a piece of paper, the technology is gone through the roof, as it done in a lot of industries.
Yeah, those of us at Rise Doro noticed the drones were up, and the drones were giving you real-time information. You could see the smoke and where the flames were coming from. And again, that's where those messages said, hey, we got problems, get out, came from.
Well, the other thing it gives us the ability to do is put those drones in places that we don't have to put a human being in. Where years ago we had to put a human being in there to see that, but now we can put the drone in that place and not have to endanger a firefighter life by doing that. So the technology has really enhanced our ability to send our men and women home safe every day.
All right, we have been talking to Chief Keith Powers, Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department, the man on the scene, and that's the joke. For all these decades I've been covering stuff, is the fire chief, they'd have to usually fight to keep a fire chief from putting on a bunker, a coat, and a mask to go in. So we know you've been in there. Any last thought for the 15 seconds?
Yeah, just want to thank our men and women for what they do every day. Like I said, we are just blessed as a city to have the folks that we do working for JFRD. They really go above and beyond, and I couldn't be prouder of being able to represent them.
All right. Well, I thank you very much, Keith. Get the dentures in place. Keith Powers, JFRD Chief, and the quiet guy in the corner is Eric Prosper, his PIO, and the guy that very nice to deal with. So both of you, thank you. Thanks so much for being here.